All right, what's going on, everybody? Okay. All right, so what's going on, everybody? So another guild night down, right? We've got a cool one tonight. My buddy Tyler Casey here is going to be talking to us about all things SIEMs. But before we get to that, though, and get to him, got a couple quick guild notes. For next week, we have Vodkanut doing his exploits and blunders on pen test talk. It should be pretty cool. It's a what happens when things go wrong kind of deal. For next month, we've got a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of stuff happening. Make sure you're paying attention to the events channel and to the pin messages. So we've got two different workshops happening. One web app workshop happening with Sunny. Another one is going to be an OSINT workshop happening with John actually at the end of the month. So stay tuned for news on that one. We've got a bunch of really cool talks happening next month too. We've got one new thing we're introducing. We want to see what you guys think. We'll kind of gauge and see how it works out. But we're calling them lunch and learns basically. We're going to have a stream probably the second week of April on a weekday. It'll be like half hour, 45 minutes during lunch that you can catch if you want. That one, the first one's going to be on Vim power usage. It's going to be presented to you guys by a pretty cool Scotsman I know. He's a character, let's put it that way. He's pretty awesome. The next thing you have for you guys admin-wise, there's some new content and new stuff coming out here soon. You'll notice we're going to push probably here in the next couple of weeks Notion. We're going to kind of have a central repository put out there for you guys, for members to access, obviously. That kind of houses a lot of this content and stuff that we keep throwing around constantly inside Slack. So it'll be a good place to find like helpful links, talks, things like that. We'll have the calendar put into there so you guys will always have access to it, and it'll be smoother than trying to find us on the website now. There'll be just a really good resource to have. We think you guys will like it. We'll see how that works out. The other one is the website will be getting revamped here soon. As long as the PC gods are good to us and Chris's desktop holds up, we should have some new branding coming out here soon. You guys have seen some hints of it already, so that should be happening. I can't wait for that. Get some swag finally. I know you guys are dying for t-shirts and hats and more Chris artwork, right? And then the last thing we want to say, I'm sure you guys saw the new intro. There's a nice little slide in there. We've had a couple guild members that have been helping us out and supporting us through this time period and moving forward, so we wanted to do the same and support them and support their businesses and products. First one being Dr. Sunny and our Burp Tool Buddy. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a really cool new app, all things web app realistically and dealing with Burp Suite. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's pretty cool. And again, that's from our own Dr. Sunny here. The second one is Industrious Kraken. I'm sure you guys saw that on the new video stream too, right? Chris did some amazing artwork as usual. Not yet? Oh, you'll see it here in a minute then, don't worry about it. This one, Realistic, can help you automate anything like policies, procedures, training, dealing with your employees and audits and compliance and all that fun stuff. So if that's in your wheelhouse and stuff you do every day, I'd really suggest talking to Rab and his group over at Industrious Kraken. With that, I don't want to waste too much of y'all's time, so quick intro on Tyler. Tyler is an amazing guy I met a few years back. We used to work on the teams together doing a lot of our little DCO missions and fun stuff. Had some pretty crazy times, some pretty interesting missions, and this guy is a brainchild. I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy the talk tonight. With that, I am going to get out of the way and let Chris's artwork speak for itself and let Tyler start.
Hi everybody, like Trey had done the intro for me, I'm Tyler Casey. I appreciate the intro there, Trey, and the awesome artwork. So without that, I'll start my my talk. So I'm good. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. A little confusion on my end. So today, like you said, we're going to talk about hunting through the SIEM. So again, I'm Tyler Casey. The overview. So we're going to do another quick little bit of who I am, what is a SIEM. We're going to talk about the Lockheed Martin kill chain, the MITRE ATT&CK navigator, and then finally, we're going to go into bots, specifically the bots V1 data set, and that's where we'll start to hunt. So, like I said, I'm Tyler Casey. For the last couple of years, last 5 years, I've been on a CPT, like Trey said, doing different defensive cyber operations and exercises all over the country. I'm told that a lot of people here are red teamers and have a lot of red team experience. I have a little bit from different courses I've been to. I'm Marine Corps Red Team certified, but that's really just a course that you take. So I know a little bit about it, but I don't know too much. I mostly focus on blue type events. I had recently transitioned out of the Marine Corps. I'm actually still on my terminal leave. I have a couple weeks left of that, so I've only been out like a month or so. Before I moved over to cyber and went to the team, I was a data Marine, 0651, if there's any vets on here. I worked at the Mitzi over in Camp Lejeune, running the help desk, doing watch officer and server type stuff. I live in St. Louis now, go Cards. And then my Twitter handle is at the bottom if anybody wants to link up. I don't really post too much, but I follow a lot of really good people. So yeah. All right. So getting into it. What is a SIEM? Nuts and bolts, a SIEM is a log aggregator. Nuts and bolts. Without doing anything else to it, that's what it is. So a company would have different sensors or tools deployed across an enclave or across the enterprise. The logs would all be forwarded and ingested by the SIEM. Like you see here, we got Splunk, Kibana, Azure, Sentinel, and ArcSight, if you want to call that a SIEM. And then you as the analyst would be able to query all the data from all the different devices that push their logs up to the SIEM. So you could have your network sensors, so something that's running Zeek, formerly known as Bro, your firewall logs, your syslog servers, Windows event logs, sysmon logs, host-based protection logs or alerts, such as HBSS for the government guys out there, antivirus log, FireEye HX, Velociraptor, all of those and more. I mean, you can add whatever you want to it. You can feed it just straight XML documentation if you want. You can feed it anything. And the real goal of a SIEM, like I have on there, is to be able to take all that data that you have, and then correlate it. So what I mean by that is, like, if you get an alert from your host-based protection or your antivirus saying that it hit on malware on an endpoint, you would then be able to take a unique identifier or the UID or the GUID or whatever from that alert, and then correlate that or pivot off that or join that to your other source types or data sources or logs, and then kind of map it out all the way from start to finish, which is kind of what we're going to do here in, I don't know, a couple minutes or so, to go through just start to bottom, check in from it coming inside, or excuse me, from it coming outside from the dirty internet to your machine, different actions that could have happened, things like that. Make sure I hit on my main points on this one. Oh, you could also, one of the really good things about a SIEM is if you're feeding it your host logs or your Windows event logs or Linux event log, your var logs or what have you, or your different servers, and you do get a piece of malware and you're able to pull that unique identifier, you can then search across your entire enclave, your entire environment, and see if that piece of malware alerted on anything else. So it's not really useful if you are on, in this instance, we're going to be on a web server, right? So if you're on a web server and you get a piece of malware on it and you take it off, but that piece of malware is a worm or some other kind of automated lateral movement, if you only take it off the web server and not everything else, you haven't really done anything. It's like if you cut the head off Hydra, one always grows back, right? So using the SIEM, you will quickly be able to identify or even be able to automate, like it hits off of a malware alert and then it sends that and like kind of an automated task of sorts across the enclave to search if it's there. And then using some of these products, it'll automatically do that. Splunk has one called Phantom, which will do it. I think it has a free version that you could try out. You can't use it across an enterprise, but for like personal use, you could, where it'll link up the different types, or it'll link up the different tools or security devices you might have, be it your antivirus or HX or Zeek or any of that stuff, and then it'll send it to like VirusTotal, or it'll automatically quarantine machines, different things like that. That's more advanced than what we're going to get into today, but that is essentially what a SIEM is. It's a place for all of your logs to go. It's one website you have to log into, and you can see however many tools you have. It is a huge time saver. It makes it a lot easier to get just a full picture of what's happening, right? And that's really what you're looking for. It gets real complicated when you have 10 different browsers up that all tell you different things, and the GUIDs don't match because it uses something else to its own unique identifier, and with a SIEM, you're able to kind of remedy all of that. So that takes us into the Lockheed Martin kill chain. So it has 7 different phases to it. I'm not going to read what it says, but it will, if you utilize the Lockheed Martin kill chain, it helps to reconstruct an attack. So each of these steps has its own indicators, like you're seeing. This is useful because based off of the indicator that you have, you can tell what has happened. And what I mean by that is, let's say you get an alert that there's a piece of malware installed on a system that would drop you immediately down to the installation phase, to phase 5. So you know that an attacker or an adversary would have had to do recon, weaponization, delivery, exploitation to get to the installation phase that you're now on. So utilizing that, you can start your hunt or your analysis anywhere inside, you can start your hunt or your analysis from any of these steps, right? Because you know that they couldn't have gotten to installation without doing recon, without doing scans, without developing a piece of malware or finding an exploit or finding a vulnerability, right? So we're going to be using this when we start hunting here in a little bit, and we're going to fill it out top to bottom of how you would map an attack. And then something I had on here is a couple years ago, I think maybe 2 years or so, at B-Sides St. Louis, they had over here one of the speakers. I think he was one of the Verizon employees who puts out the yearly defensive report. He had said that an adversary has to do all these steps right for their mission success, and the defender just has to do one step right for their success. Now that is paraphrasing, as I said, it was 2 years ago, and it's a little bit of a generalization, but I like to bring it up whenever I discuss the Lockheed Martin kill chain. So the adversary has to do all of these steps, all 7 steps, and they have to do them all properly and without being mitigated. They might be seen, and that's okay if they're fast enough or they're intelligent enough. But if they go through unmitigated, then they will be successful. And as a defender, if you can stop them at any one of these phases, I guess until you get to 7, because then they'll be done. But if you can stop them at any of those phases, then they have to essentially start over again. So if you stop them as soon as their C2 goes out, they're going to have to step back, regroup, and if they don't have some kind of backdoor or some kind of persistence set up, like in the malware installation, they're going to have to go back to their weaponization and delivery and create a new piece of malware, a new exploitation that is going to get past the C2. They're going to need new domains, maybe new infrastructure, all based off of what mitigations you put in place. Obviously, the pyramid of pain, if anybody is familiar with that, talks more about that, how much of a hassle it is to change different things. But still, even if they have to change something small, these adversaries, typically as you get into more advanced ones like APTs and things like that, they're like a business. You know, you have to pay these people. You have to pay for the malware. You got to pay for the cloud space. You got to pay for servers, electricity, rooms, all that stuff. So if you can stop them, then to them it's going to be, is it worth the time and the money and the resources to go after whatever they're going after? If you were maybe a target of opportunity or a target, you know, that has a low yield back to them, and you're able to stop them consistently, they might just move on. You know, you could be saving yourself a lot of hassle by just being the break in the chain. And this concept is really enforced by another concept called defense in depth. So that's having multiple different defense mechanisms inside each of these steps, right? So you're talking having you know, a load balancer. You're talking about having firewall rules that work and are checked and updated, not just some allow any in there that you bought out of the box. Having ACLs, access control lists, having host-based security systems, having your host-based antivirus turned on, having some kind of continual threat feed going on, having an intelligence cell if your company or entity, you know, has something like that. You know, whether you have to have open source tools, which get a bad rap sometimes, but can be really great, like Velociraptor and Gur. I'm a host-based kind of guy. That's what I really like. But like Velociraptor and Gur are fantastic host-based analysis tools that will alert on things. You don't have to spend a ton of money to get good results. You just need a little bit of time to kind of work through it. All right. So with all that, what does that have to do with the SIEM and hunting through the SIEM, right? So a few things for the talk today or the discussion today. So like I said before, we're going to be filling out the Lockheed Martin kill chain when we start hunting, and that's soon, real soon. And then something else to think about is in an enterprise defense, you're going to have gaps in visibility. You can't log everything, and if you did, it's probably going to be less useful than it would be if you only logged what you thought was important or what you could kind of like sell to yourself as like, you know, I need to see like host base. I need to see what processors are being created. I need to see if something is run at a temp, you know, things like that you log. But if you log everything, you're just going to be bogged down in potentially, depending on the size of your environment, thousands, hundreds of thousands of logs. It's too much to be able to use, and you'll even see when we start getting into it, sometimes the time it can take for these results to come back if you're not really utilizing the search query. We're going to be using Splunk, so the SPL. If you're not utilizing that the best you can, it might take a while for your results to get back. You might be getting up and getting coffee a lot. So something to think about with the visibility gaps, like I said before, if you know which step you're at, you can, if you know which step you're at, you and your team can hypothesize as to what is happening in between, right? So we, Trey was there actually. Trey and I were running an exercise in Virginia, and we couldn't find the how the malware started, how the installation happened on the machine, or excuse me, how the delivery happened on the machine. We were able to find the scans. We found the malware itself. We could not explain, like, with facts, with pure facts, how it got there. So between him and I talking, there's only a couple ways, which we'll get into, to really deliver something to an endpoint, right? So an email, which is happens through the web, excuse me, while it be a drive-by download, or they click on something, spam, whatever, or a USB, something physically being put in there, right? So in this environment, we have full visibility to all the host logs. So we could see if there were any USBs in there. We could see if any CDs were put in. Nothing, right? So that's all logged, and even if you get rid of it, it's saved in your registry anyway. For web, we had a pretty good visibility as far as web. Again, this was an exercise, so it's an exercise environment. So you can only automate so much exercise noise as it is, where we knew that probably wasn't it. The one thing that we didn't have were email logs. We couldn't, the local defenders wouldn't give us the rights to look at the email server, the Outlook server. We had no SMTP logs, nothing. So we had come up with, it's more than likely that they had sent an email with an attachment, and that attachment was saved, ran, and that's how the malware got to it. And come to be it, we were right, and they were pretty impressed with the hypothesis that we came up with, that a lot of other people didn't have, because we followed this exact chart right here. We have it up on a giant board, and we'll write in what we think it could be, what we know it could be, and it's really useful. One other thing for this is to have the proven visibility gaps, like I'm saying. So if you're like a private company and you're having a hard time getting some kind of funding or something, you can display your findings for an attack or for an adversarial engagement utilizing the Lockheed Martin kill chain, and show them, like, hey, we detected this at the C2. If you would have provided us with the tools or the sensors we needed to find it at exploitation, we could have patched the server and they would have never gotten down below delivery. I work for the government, so I'm not really sure how that works in the private world, but everybody always brings it up, and I think that it is valid. Or if it's not, to sell yourself to your boss or to the money guys, it does work, at least in small teams, when you're talking about where to put your limited resources, when you can kind of back it up with fact about where things would better be placed, and this really helps do that. So then from that, we roll into the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. So the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator is a framework that utilizes the MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques to have a more in-depth mapping of essentially what an adversary is doing. So it also comes with pre-built threat group detections to get your threat intelligence people excited, or to maybe map out what different APTs would do, so you could maybe have an idea as to what is coming next if you're a little stuck. It is, I'm gonna demo it here in a minute, just a blank one. It is very useful. I think it came out last year, maybe 18 months ago. We've used this on engagements. It makes it very easy to logically and in-depth show what an adversary is doing, even to people who aren't technical or don't necessarily understand exactly what you're talking about. So it's a little too big to fit on the PowerPoint. So I have the website pulled up. Excuse me. So quick sip of water. So this is it, the attack navigator. So you can see here across the top is all of the techniques, and then down here are the tactics. So I'll leave this up for a second while I'm talking. We're going to be doing this at the end of our hunt and filling in the different things that we saw. But if you've never used this before, it is super useful. They have sub tactics, so like active scanning, and then which one they're doing. If you're not sure exactly what it's talking about, because these are kind of subjective, you can go to view tactic, and then it'll pull it up. They're all serialized for reports, and it's very useful. And then they even show this one. Let's do mitigations for it and how to detect it, or like the different detection efforts you can have. It's very, very useful. I would recommend it. And then you can color code these, which we're going to do. You can score them based off of whatever you want to, I guess. But if you want to score them off of what's the most detrimental to your enclave, or to what is the most likely, you could have different courses of action, which is what we used it for. We use this pre-engagement and post-engagement based off the intelligence we had to map out a most likely course of action, a most dangerous course of action, and then after the engagement to map out what had happened. And we even were able to compare it and talk to our intelligence cell about where the differences were, what they had that proved useful, and different things like that. It's very, very useful. And then you can save them, filter down on different operating systems. Here it is. And then you can filter, as I had said before, through the different threat groups. So APT-19, if you know you're hunting them, see it just highlighted a bunch of stuff. I'm going to pick a quick color. You can be like, okay, the APT is most likely to active scan, drive-by compromise, command and scripting interpreter, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It also has a map with software and has the mitigations. So let's see if I can deselect. Let's say 19, deselect. No, okay. Oh, I think it's because I hit the color after it unclicked it. But if you want to look at data backup, so it's got all the different things. I'll put it in a different color, green, that could be affected by data backup. So that the mitigations is new. I've never really messed with that before, but the threat groups is really very interesting. And then your intelligence cell, if you have it, could also use this to map the threat groups out or contribute to the project. All right, here we go. So let's talk about bots. It's what we're here for. So bots is put on by Splunk. It's the Splunk boss of the SOC, or bots. It's a capture the flag environment that Splunk does every year at their .conf, which is their conference they do. I believe it's out of Maryland. And then there's also a small Splunk contingency that goes around and will do smaller engagements of this. So they come with a scenario, typically a ton of source types, and a fairly realistic data set. You can tell they definitely put a lot of work into it. We use, or I've put on some courses with V1, version 1 and version 2, and then we've also hosted it locally here. They released version 1 and 3 to the public. Excuse me. It also has a scoreboard you can download off their GitHub up there at the top to like log points. You can make teams. People can do it individually, be on their own team, or have teams of up to however many people you want. And then you could also download either the malicious activity only or the full data set, depending on what you're doing with it. So the full data set has a bunch of noise surrounding it, so it's a little harder to go through, whereas the malicious activity obviously just has the malicious activity. The CTF has questions and answers, obviously. So there, I believe, at least version 1 and version 2 have multiple scenarios. So if you download the full data set, you'll have to differentiate between the noise from multiple scenarios. But it's a lot of fun. It's free. We're going to be utilizing the bots v1 data set for the hunting. That's coming up next. And then I downloaded the malicious activity only. Just thought it would make for a cleaner version of it. I've taught a course using this data set before, or using the full data set, and it's like a 3-day course. So I figured for the little bit of time we have, it would be easier for just the malicious activity. And then I told Trey, but I don't know if he put it up, but there is a person who hosts bots v1 dataset online. It is splunk.samsclass.info, and the username and password is student1. So same. If anybody wants to hop on and look through the data, or follow along, if you know Splunk or you just want to mess around with it, it's pretty intuitive. I will say, if you are gonna follow along, I don't know this person. I don't have any kind of anything from him. It's just a guy that hosted online. It's been online for a couple of years now. And then when you do it, make sure you specify bots equal, or index equals bots v1, and then it'll start pulling up some of the data for you. I believe it has the questions and answers in here too. When you get into the source types, you'll be able to filter all that out. But for anybody who wants to follow along or just take a peek at it, that's where it is. Again, I'll put it in there one more time in case anybody didn't see it. Sorry. Here you go. Splunk.samsclass.info, and then student1, all lowercase. Leave that up there for a second. All right. All right, so now we're getting into it. So the scenario for bots v1, this is how it comes when you do the exercise, is reports of the below graphic come in from your user community when they visit the Wayne Enterprises website. Some of the reports reference Poison Ivy. In case you are unaware, Poison Ivy is an APT group that has targeted Wayne Enterprises. Your goal is to investigate the defacement with an eye towards reconstructing the attack via the Lockheed Martin kill chain. So we got a website defacement inside of Wayne Enterprises. We've been called in to take a look at it. I believe in this scenario, we're an outside entity, so that's how we're going to treat it, totally black box. The only thing that we know is Wayne Enterprises, Poison Ivy, website defacement. All right. So recon, the first phase. So basically what we're going to do with this is I'm going to do a quick little skosh about what an attacker will do in the phase, and then what a defender can identify or look at, different logs maybe, or things that they need to identify. And then we're going to talk about that for a second, and then drop out and then into Splunk and then find it, more or less. So each of the phases will have a slide. They're going to look pretty much just like this, and then we'll get into the Splunk itself. So, sorry guys. for recon, phase one. The attacker or adversary is likely scan for public-facing web servers, do some OSR, open source research, harvest company emails, gather company information, things like that. As the defenders, in this specific instance, because we are coming in at black box, we also need to do a little bit of recon on our own. We need to identify what domain, outside domain, is conducting the scans, what type of scans, and then we also need to figure out what software the web server has, what the IP addresses for the web server are, what the host name is, all that stuff. If anybody has been on any kind of missions or engagements, you know that you can't trust any network maps that you get. They're all wrong. They're all outdated. You have to go back in and do it again. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do that with Splunk. There's better tools for it, which is the only time I'm going to say that anything is better than Splunk. There's better tools that'll do it, but Splunk works just fine. So let's drop out of this. All of the Splunk queries we're going to be doing, I put in dashboards, so it's a little easier for me to go through, and I hopefully won't be stopped by the demo gods. But if we want to do some live searches, maybe at the end, if anybody has something, or if you guys are going through it and find something cool that you want to demo, they can shoot it to me and we can toss it up. So recon. One sec. All right. So the first thing you have to do, the first thing you should always do, if you're an external entity or you're coming on a system that you're not familiar with, is you got to look at the source types. You've got to see what you have, because you couldn't possibly know what to look for or how to even begin to have a search that'll yield you good results without knowing what you could possibly look at, right? So just a simple stats count by source type. You can see we got Windows event logs, which are sysmon. We got some stream data. We got SMB, Suricata, which is your intrusion detection system, Windows event logs, Windows registry, firewalls, a lot of different stream data in there. IIS, it's an interesting one. So even intuitively, we could see that the web server is probably hosted by Windows IIS, or it's probably a Windows IIS server. And then some more, we got some Nessus data. I don't know if that'll be helpful. And then some other stream data. So now we have an idea what kind of data we have and what we can leverage or manipulate, then we can move forward. So like I said, we don't trust the infrastructure or the IP scheme or anything like that about any of their devices. So the first thing we got to do is, one of the first things we need to do is figure out the web server IP address. So pretty simple in this instance. We're just going to count the connections with web ports as destination ports, and that's utilizing the stream HTTP source type. So this is looking for data coming in with a destination port of 80, 8080, 443, 44, 4433, 8000, stuff like that, just basic web ports. We can see the top one by quite a bit is this 192.168.250.70. Again, this is only the malicious data set, so things are going to stand out in this a bit more readily than they would if we had all the noise, or depending on the size of the environment that you're hunting in. But so that seems like a pretty good indication that this is it. It is a private IP address, which is interesting. We'll talk about that probably at the end. If anybody has any thoughts or ideas on that, they could eat it up in the chat. But so after that, we're trying to find the web server host name. So we use sysmon for this, or the XML win event log source type. The sysmon is the source. And then just specifying the destination IP to destination hostname. See, all these are Whiskey Echo 1149 Sierra Romeo Victor dot Wayne Core inc dot local. So feel pretty strongly in the integrity of this data that it's accurate, just because everything is the same. You know, some of them have the extra domain bits on there. That's all right. And then what is the domain name? So how are people reaching this? So utilizing the web server IP address, and then in there you can look at the URIs, the HTTP refers, or the location of the server. These are all fields inside of Splunk, or inside of the source type rather. See that all these are reaching out to imreallynotbatman.com/Joomla. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit, but you can see on there that this is a web server, like we already know. It's got a lot of these extensions to it. Joomla is a CMS, or content management system or service. I forget what the S is. System. It's system. So that'll be something that we'll utilize later. But yeah, so right now we know the web server IP address, the web server host name, and the web server domain name that's being hosted. We also know that Joomla is the content manager, much like WordPress is probably a more popular one. And then we can also theorize that due to it having an IIS source type, that a Windows IIS server is what is actually running the web server. So now that we know a little bit about the web server, let's get into what's happening to it. So we need to find out what IP is scanning the web server. For this, I just did, I counted all the posts up to the web server, which is done through the HTTP source type, the stream HTTP. See that we got two of them, this 40.80 and this 23.22. Got substantially more coming from the 4080. So that's what we're gonna check out next. So this search here is just seeing what connections from the possibly malicious IP, specifically the 4080, to the web server, trying to see what's going on, right? So we got that, and then we're tabling out the method, source headers, URI, and the source content. I don't think, yeah. And then tabling out, if you're not familiar with Splunk, is essentially just like you just calling the headers that you want to be pulled out. So Splunk will give it to you in like a big blurb, you know, a big what's the word I'm trying to think of? It essentially, it won't break down all the fields. So when you call out the headers, or when you table them out, it'll pull out just that information for you. So here, again, this is the 4080 to the web server. We see that Joomla again, seeing it's going to I'm Not Really Batman. It's kind of double hitting what we were looking at before. User agent could be interesting. This one doesn't look too crazy, but maybe something to keep a note of. And then you got this bad boy right here, this Acunetti's product, which, like it says here, is a web vulnerability scanner, and they're using the free edition, which could be telling based off the TTPs that you have. But typically for an adversary, if you could use a free one instead of having to pay for it, why wouldn't you just use a free one? But it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we feel like this is probably what's doing all the scanning, right? But we don't really know yet, just a thought. We're looking at the source content. We're seeing a bunch of .. backslashes. So we see probably some directory traversal going on. About mail to sender could be one of the tests that it does, equal with a bunch of closed parentheses. So possibly some kind of injection in the URL, checking to see if the what is being submitted to is being sanitized correctly, or if they could, maybe return something crazy, much like a buffer overflow, but in the URL, or a server-side exploitation. See some if-then XOR stuff. Okay. There's some SQL injection that we see after we look at it for a while. And then there's one that I wanted to show. Where's she at? Again, directory traversal into the boot. Here it is. So this one is printing out the Acnetes WVS, which is probably the web vulnerability service or something like that, security test. So we can see that more likely Acnetes, if you don't know anything about it or you didn't research it after you found this, has a bunch of predefined scans that it'll do, a bunch of different vulnerability assessments that it'll run. So see that out of the 14,000 or 12,000, 13,000 almost, probably quite a bit of these are this Acnetes stuff. So got that down as a possible for the scanning IP address, but seems more than likely. So then we'll take a look at the 2322, same basic thing. You'll notice that these are posts for the 4080, and there's a lot of gets here with the 2322. So a lot less information here so far. Excuse me again. See the host again is imnotreallybatman.com. Using this Python URL lib 2.7. Again, these logs are from 2016, so 2.7 was still in then. So this is one of the times where the user agent is a bit more interesting. It definitely leans towards this being some kind of automated or scripted or homegrown tool, or a script kitty tool maybe that they found on the internet, but definitely something that's not it's not a normal user clicking on a website, right? So as we keep going through, see if anything else interesting, a lot of the stuff is the same. And then we get over here to page 11, and then it looks a lot different. It looks a bit more like the 40.80 data that we were seeing. So one of the things that we see here is still using Python, and now it's posting to the Joomla admin index.php. We got some username admin, we got some passwords here. So if you look through this, some of these are inappropriate. I think they got it from a big list, but you can see that there's a lot of username and passwords being passed up to this server, whole bunch. That'll take us out of the recon phase. So before we move on, so we know, or we think so far, more than likely, the 4080, which is running Acnetes off of it, the free version, is more than likely the scanner. And then the 2322 is doing that GET request to the server, which, could be anything, could be just like testing out the script or whatever. Then we see a lot of these potential brute force attempts, which we're going to investigate here in the exploitation here in a minute. So to the slides real quick. Before we get ahead of myself, the next logical step in the kill chain is weaponization and delivery. However, all we know so far is 2 IP addresses, that it's being scanned, and that there's probably a brute force attempt happening. We don't know if it's successful or anything like that. So we don't really have enough information about the attack to come up with these 2 faces, So that's something that'll come into play at the end. But don't forget that, like, in the steps down it, weaponization and delivery are the next logical steps. So then we get into the exploitation, like I was saying. So the enemy is going to be doing brute force, cross-site scripting, which is when they inject scripts into the web pages, buffer overflows, or client-side execution, which is getting the endpoint to click on something, right? Or drive-by download or something like that. So as defenders, we need to investigate the public-facing server logs, whether that be the HTTP stream data that we've already looked at, local event logs, Windows event logs if it's a Linux machine or if it's running Apache, checking that out, the var logs, sysmon data if you have it, and IDS alerts. Then we're gonna roll back to exploitation and installation. So, like we discussed, we got a brute force. All right, let's just call it like we see it. So, utilizing the HTTP source type, again, it's the main one. This is a web server. A lot of the stuff is using the stream HTTP data. Not that that's the only one you could use. It's probably in other places as well, but based off the visibility and stuff you have. Anyway, so utilizing the HTTP source type, and then we're gonna use some regex to pull out the username and the user password from that data field. So in the last one, I believe it was the source content. The form data also has it in there, and possibly the URI too. So we see there's a bunch of admins, 10 pages at least of different passwords. So we need to look at, excuse me. So next, we're gonna look at what usernames were used, right? So we see only admin. One of the interesting things to note in this is the 2322 has pert near all of the attempts, right? It's got 412, and the 4080, which we identified as probably being the scanner, only has one. So very interesting. Which password worked? So the logic behind this is to just count how many, utilizing the regex fields that we pulled out, which were the username and the user password, which ones were used more than once. So the reason for that is if you got something automated like that script that we saw, some kind of Python library running, if it's going, it's probably got something in there like if returns HTTP code 200, then send something back, flag it or stop it or whatever, so we know it worked. So you'll have one that does that, and then likely the next iteration of that would be a successful logon, right? Which brings us into, well, which machines type Batman, which we see is the only one that has 2 attempts on it as the password. We see one from 2322, which again is what is doing the brute force, and then one from the 4080, which was doing the scanning. So why, what is the point of having 2 different IP addresses or several IP addresses or instances doing this? I'd say that likely the adversary has some kind of split infrastructure or, excuse me, or multiple IPs at their disposal or domains or something, which this is going to look back to the weaponization of it. I think in a more realistic environment, you would probably have 3, because why would you have 2 machines that were pretty easily identified be the one that logged back into it? Or maybe this 4080 already served its purpose as being a scanner. So if it's caught again as being the one that logged in, that's all it's going to do, then, maybe why would you burn the extra infrastructure if you don't need to? Don't know. Maybe at the end that'll become a more clear picture, or something to deal with. The think tanks can handle that. So now we found, just to recap, 4080 Actinity's scanner, 2322 brute force IP address, 4080 probably the successful logon with admin Batman, right? So now we found exploitation, brute force, and we're going to move on to the installation. So installation, pretty basic. As an adversary or the enemy or whatever, they just want to install malware on the asset. As the defenders, we need to identify the malware, and that could be through an intrusion detection system, host event log, sysmon, or host-based protection, be that your antivirus, be that if you got HBSS, GUR, Velociraptor, whatever. So I'm gonna just go down. So again, what was installed on the web server? So this, we're checking out the IDS, which in this instance is Suricata, and we're gonna just kind of look at what IDS alerts have the malicious IPs associated with them, be it the 4080 or the 2322 and the web server. So looking through, the first thing that I see is this VTI bin shtml.exe. Odd, right? If you look over here, it's also over there, so we'll talk about it here in a minute. Then looking through, see some libraries, some CGI bin, nothing too crazy. This 3791.exe seems out of place, and this extplore.zip seems a little weird. Everything else seems pretty normal, I think. So we'll go ahead and narrow it down to common executable file extensions. So for that, it's essentially the same search that you have. You just specify different file extensions, or some logs you can specify file types. So in this, we just, we're looking for anything .exe, anything .ps1, anything .ps, bat, VBS, maybe XMLs. You can look for zips if you think those are odd, whatever you think they're hiding the executable in. If you have the ability to search by file type, that is a more true form than just an extension, because you can make an extension anything, but that isn't the case for this. So the first thing, this shtml.exe, so I thought was odd. Doing a little bit of research, it says it's normal for web servers. It just means that the front page extensions is installed, which I guess is something that CMSs use to provide different extensions and the like. I'm not a web developer, so I'm not sure, but from what I saw, it all seems pretty normal. However, just because a file is normal, that doesn't mean that it hasn't been manipulated to seem normal, or a name change, or that the file hasn't been tampered with, injected with something. But in this instance, we're going to go ahead and investigate this 3791, right? So first thing we got to look at, you'll see this is a pretty common trend, is in what source types is this executable, right? Is this proposed malware? So just doing a quick index equals bots star 3791.exe stats count by source type is going to pull out all the places where this exists. So XML win event log is sysmon, Windows event log, that HTTP data again, firewall, and the IDS. So what I want to know now is, we see that that it was installed. By installed, all we really know is that it hit on the IDS. We don't know if the IDS is a network, if it's host based, whatever. So we're going to look on the system, on the web server, and we're going to check the Windows event logs for new process creation, which is event ID 4688. So what this does, we can see it's got the same time. This cmd.exe spawns it. It's got the 2 $&1. That is similar to the 2 dev null on a Linux system. It basically sends the standard error out to a trash can to null, so it doesn't pop up. There's no pop-ups on your screen. Command prompt doesn't come up and say that it loaded something or didn't load something or whatever. And then we see just the executable itself, the 3791.exe. Again, at the same time, I'm pretty sure this happened first, but we'll get more into that here after a minute. So we know a little bit more about it. Let's learn a little bit more. So we're going to take this hash right here, or back up. So we're going to utilize sysmon, or the XML Windows event source type, and we're going to pull the hash out. We're going to yeet it up to virus total and see what it says, right? So let's go to it. Boom, lots of red. So probably not good, right? Looking through, hit on some of the main ones. Almost always have something that hits on one or two things. That's a pretty bad sign. Details doesn't show too much. ab.exe is another name it goes by. That doesn't have to do with our scenario here, but you would likely search for that also across an enclave if this wasn't, a CTF. You'd search for that across the enclave and see if there was any kind of mutations or whatever, but the file hash would be the same, so you'd search for that anyway. Nothing too crazy in that. The relations, this does, yeah, I'm not signed in, so we don't get to see that. Behavior, nothing really. Reaches out on DNS, maybe. Maybe some kind of lookup, or it's trying to phone home as like a, hey, I'm alive, hey, I was installed, whatever, we'll see. You can see in the community there were different detections made. Got Steve Miller and Florian Roth had made it. Got some hex right here and some hex here. Ryan Kovar, is an awesome dude to follow on Twitter. If you are not following him, he is the co-creator of Splunk bots. So this is a part of the challenge. But if you wanted to see it, you could take it, yeet it on into CyberChef, and then do a from hex. You can see what it says. Okay, so after that, so we have confirmed that 3791.exe is installed, it's running, and it was delivered by 40.80. I got a lot of malicious hits, 60 out of 69 on virus total. So now we know that a little bit. We're going to see what events are happening around it, or what that is doing, right? So what's it doing? So we're taking another look at the sysmon logs. Really just the standard for the gold standard for host-based logs. It's just fantastic. If you haven't messed around with it, I really would encourage it. Swift on Security has a great XML configuration for how to do it. But so we're looking at the sysmon logs. We've got the image over here, the 3791.exe, and then what it loads. So it's loading a lot of DLLs, not necessarily that strange. You can do some research on what these mean when they're put together, but for right now, we're just kind of taking a peek at it. So then once it breaks out of the, see, it's got the inet pub www root, which is more than likely publicly hosted. That was how they uploaded it. And then you got this. So you see a little change there. That's interesting. And then you can see the command line here, the parent command line. So this will spawn these. So we're seeing all these are the same time again. This doesn't have it down to the millisecond, but thinking this is probably backwards. The way that I'm reading this is this PHP CGI.exe is spawning cmd.exe or command prompt C. So it's gonna run this like it's a command, just start it, and again put all of the standard error out to the trash, and then it's running the executable, and then it's also running this conhost.exe. So I'm thinking it's probably opening up some kind of network connection, connection host. I read in some research that this is kind of like the opening hex value. It's all, it's all 15, it's all the way open. So know a little bit about it. And then something that I learned in my research is that CGI is a common gateway interface, which is the other half of this PHP CGI.exe. It is a web technology and protocol that defines a way for a web server to interact with external applications. It's commonly manipulated to upload web shells. So I'm thinking that this was exploited in order to upload this 39 or 3791.exe, and that this 3791.exe is probably a web shell that is going to be useful in the next part of our search. So next one that we're going to hit up is C2 and actions on objective. These are on the same slide. I think that they go together because like C2, the malware you put on has to do something. It's taking some kind of action. I know it might not be the right way to think about it, but that's how I think about it. I think that you could argue either side for them kind of being same, but different. Anyway, so the enemy, the C2 part of it, the adversary, is going to create a channel for remote manipulation, and then actions on objective is going to be, data exfil, website defacement, sabotage, could be anything, any kind of actions on objective. Maybe they just want to sit and hang out for a little bit and just gather information. It could be anything. So as defenders, we need to investigate the IDS logs, intrusion detection system, outbound connections, to some, to, in our instance, is going to be those 2 IPs that we already identified as being anomalous or malicious so far. Host-based protection, again, HBSS, antivirus, blah, blah, blah. Sysmon, which we've been using, and then host event log, be that your var log or, Windows security, Windows application logs, whatever. So let's, as we're about to move very quickly into the actions on objective, let's not forget that this hunt was originally spawned because of a website defacement. So we already know at least one action. So utilizing the kill chain, we could have started with what we already knew. So we could have started down on actions on objective, knowing that it was a website defacement, maybe gotten a little more background information about the internal infrastructure from Wayne Core Enterprises, and gone up or down that way, with the kind of more black and white version of having only the malicious data. It was easier, and I think it makes more sense logically for us to do it the way that we did do it. But in real life, you can start this from anywhere. You take what you know and then try to know more stuff, and then you can come up with hypotheses and different ways to search for it. So just something to keep in mind. So let's go to this, actions and C2. So this one right here is utilizing Sysmon, and it takes a minute to load. So just bear with me for a second here. So I'm just gonna re-go over some of the stuff that we know. So that we know that the web server has been defaced. We've got the IPs, host name, domain name, all that of the web server that we're investigating. It still has that that private IP address. We haven't seen any public facing IP address for the web server yet. Just odd. If you're thinking of why that is, or if you have any kind of hypothesis as to why that is, I'd be interested in hearing that. We know that the 3791 was put on there by the 40.80 IP address. We know that it's running. We know that it, we're about to know something else about it. And then we know that the PHP CGI was exploited or manipulated to upload that 3791 exe web shell, right? So now we are into the C2. Look at that. Now we're into the C2, and we need to know more about 3791, right? So we're gonna check this Sysmon network connections, which is event ID 3. So see here that at 21:56:19, that the web server this 250.70 is reaching out to the 2322 IP address, which we had already identified. We also see something new here, which is this EC2 2322 computer one or compute one Amazon AWS.com. So now we know, back up. So now we know that it did in fact reach back out to the 2322 IP address from inside the web server. So not looking good for this 3791. This is more than likely the C2. We also have this new piece of information, which is this host name. More specifically to it is this Amazon AWS. So this will point back to the weaponization part of the kill chain. So if you had your board up, you guys are on this side. If you have your board up, and you've got all 7 phases in there, you'd probably put in some color that means maybe, that this host name is out there and that they're probably using Amazon AWS. So we're going to take take us straight into actions on objectives, right? So we're going to take another look at this 3791 EXE installation time period and what's going on around it, right? So it's the same query we were doing before. It is less inclusive, so provide us with a broader search. So we got nothing really so far. PHP CGI, which we could tell is manipulated, but it's still a regular process. And then you got here that connection host, and then looking at this time, 21:55:26, 21:56:19, pretty close. Be connected there. See that those are pretty close to each other. Probably they're indicative that something's going on, right? So you can see that that was open. Back up. PHP that we already had, connections being open, and then some commands are being run, right? So see this echoing something a little odd, doing a directory listing, an LS listing. That's an interesting differentiating searches there, because dir is the kind of living off the land of command prompt, where ls I don't think works in command prompt. I think it's just a PowerShell, or maybe if you've got a Meterpreter Metasploit shell going on, ls will work on any operating system. So this might not be aliased on command prompt. It could be indicative of something. ifconfig, trying to figure out what's going on. Sorry, the door was going off. So we're looking at that. We can see all these different processes that are being spawned. We have the NetView domain, who am I, NetShare. So it's trying to find out the different open shares, trying to enumerate the network around it, net user, net session. And then comes to this here, which is probably the most interesting of the ones that we have, where it's pinging the prank glass in bracket.jumpingcrab.com and doing 2 NS lookups to it. So that's interesting because that is something that we haven't seen yet, one, and it is happening right around the time of the malware executing. So it could be that it's reaching out to it to maybe tell it that it's alive, or reaching out to it to see if that domain is still available. This malware could have been out there for years before it was successfully installed. So yeah, for that. Keep going through this one, see if we can see anything else. Task list on there. So it's running all these different kind of enumeration commands. And then it's going here to the move. So it's moving 1.jpg to 2.jpg, doing a directory listing, and then moving the to JPEG to I'm not Batman.jpg, which is also the name of the web server, right? So what the moves do is rename the file. So it's just because it's in the same directory, it's just renaming it from 1 to 2, and then 2 to I'm not Batman. And then finally on there, we're seeing this exit, and then it's carrying it out to null. So that kind of looks like it's that they had gotten onto the system, I think, through the web shell that we had previously identified, and then they're running all these commands through some kind of framework, and which is why it looks like cmd.exe with the C and has the 2 greater than 1 or the dev null. And then so they were running all the commands. They did the lookups for the prank last seen bracket dot jumping crab. They moved some files. They tried to connect using the net share or the net user to go around. They weren't able to do it, and then they exited out. So pretty interesting. The next logical step is going to be to investigate the prank last seen bracket, right? So again, we're going to start with a broad search for the domain, and then see what source types it's in, and then pivot off that. So it's got IDS, DNS, firewall, HTTP, Windows event logs, and the sysmon logs, right? So looking at this is inside the stream HTTP data, we can see that the 25070 or the web server is reaching out to 2322 on this super elite port to pull down Poison Ivy is coming for you Batman.jpg. So again, we know that the web server was defaced, which is what spawned this whole thing. This has been tied to the 2322, which we have already identified. We've got Poison Ivy is coming for you Batman. Poison Ivy is the name of the APT group. Batman, Wayne Enterprises. Then to keep going through, we're going to check the firewall logs and see if that connection was allowed in, right? So we've got the times matching up, 2206.21, 2213, 2219. This is blank. Could be a corrupted field or something. When I imported it, could be anything. But so we're seeing that all these connections, everything's matching up, and they were all allowed through. So takes us to kind of the last bit of the actions on objective is you've got this huge ugly blob of raw data, right? So someone could go through, pull all this out, recompile it or re-encode it or whatever, verify that the pictures match. It's got EXIF on here, so you could pull EXIF data, maybe GPS coordinates, authors, maybe they left something in there, something like that. But another very interesting piece of this is the server down here at the bottom is a simple Python HTTP server. It's just a module you can run off of Python command lines. They were done Python space tac m simple HTTP server 1337, right? That is not something that a web server would host on its own. I gotta let my dogs out, guys. Sorry about that. That's not something that a web server would host on its own. It's already a web server. It's got 80, it's got 443, it's got whatever. In this instance, it's just 80. But having something looking out on that anomalous, and in this instance, a malicious port could be something that could have been automated or through like maybe a low-hanging fruit dashboard or something that would have alerted, hey, we have traffic leaving the web server out of something that's not 80, 80, 443, 4433, whatever your ports and protocols are, right? So we've got matching malicious domains and IP addresses. We've got the naming convention that is synonymous with the APT. We have the web server is confirmed to have pulled down the JPEG. It was allowed through by the firewall, and we have raw data of the JPEG itself. So we got a pretty good hold on what's happening here. So that pretty much wraps up the hunt as far as the SIEM is concerned. Hunting through the SIEM is concerned. However, we have two parts of the kill chain we didn't complete before that we had talked about: the weaponization and the delivery. So we're gonna get those two going. So the weaponization, the attacker is going to stage domains, build C2 infrastructure, possibly build a cyber persona, and develop a malware payload, right? And then as defenders need to look at the attack infrastructure, the malware associated with the domain or IP address, and a cyber persona, which could have been created, which is basically, they make fake email addresses, DNS entries, registrar info, they register the domains or whatever, could have contact information in it, but trying to make themselves look real, right? And then I'll just do the deliver one too, and then we'll get into it. So the delivery, the enemy is going to have USB, email, or web. And then to investigate, we need to check out the host logs, be it the Windows event log or the sysmon servers, and then a web proxy server if they have one. Firewall could also probably be useful in this. So let's check out the weaponization. So what we know before we go in there and look for anything is that we have that AWS host name, that EC2 or EC2 TAC 23 22 63 114 compute1 .amazonaws.com. We have the domain, the prank glassine bracket jumpingcrab.com, IP, the 23 22 63 114, as well as the 4080. So we know all that. So let's take that. We're going to throw it up here into the weaponization tab that I have open. I got to hide my top Zoom thing for a second. There we go. I'm going to throw it up here in threat crowd and take a look at what we see. So this one is looking for the domain, not the IP address. And we're seeing there's our IP address, there's the host name. See, all these Wayne Core lookalikes were made, possibly, if they're going to send a phishing email or something, to have it look like it. See the jumpingcrab.com, some other stuff, poisonivy.com, the name of the APT. They have FTP server and a mail server. Lillian.poisonivy.com, something. Nothing too much here. So then we're going to take a look at the IP address, vice the host name. We got a little bit more information. Some of the things we see is this one here, lillian.rose@poisonivy.com, which is something that we didn't have before in looking at just the DNS name, domain name. So from that, we're seeing the poisonivy.com, which is new. Has an SMTP server under it with lillian.rose@poisonivy. It's got an FTP server, all those Wayne Core lookalikes. So they got a pretty invested into the infrastructure here. So that could give some kind of insight into what threat level you're looking at, or the intelligence of the adversary. So for the delivery, I actually got a little bit ahead of myself. So for the delivery, what we saw for the exploitation was that the brute force, right? So upon initially thinking about it, I was like, well, the delivery then is web. The delivery and exploitation are hand in hand in this instance, that they delivered the brute force exploit or attack through the web. Case solved. Then we got a tipper from the Gotham City Police Department, which reported that common TTPs for the Poison Ivy APT group, if initial compromise fails, is to send a spear phishing email with custom malware attached to their intended target. The malware is usually connected to Poison Ivy's initial attack infrastructure. So in the last step here on the screen still, we have essentially rooted out the attack infrastructure, probably in its entirety, right? This is a pretty detailed list graphic of things. So we're going to take that information that we have, whether be it IP addresses, other host names, Lillian.rose, different things like that, and we're going to throw it against other open source resource capabilities and see if we can't find something else. Another thing with that, if I had mentioned it a couple times, and then if you had picked up on it, is that we still only have a private IP for the web server. I didn't see anything about a public IP. So we're looking at 23.22, which is a public IP address, an internet routable IP address. You see it's on Amazon, right? So how is this public facing IP address, publicly routable IP address, going through the firewall, which we know is there, and getting to the private IP of the web server, right? It could be that our logs are a little weird, and it's just showing us the private IP. Maybe there's like a one-to-one NAT. This is, a CTF data set, so maybe it just is what it is. No, you just have to hit the believe button. It's one of the gameisms. It's also possible, I think, that based off of that new threat tipper, the new intelligence that we had gotten from the Gotham City Police Department, that they sent a phishing email. We have a visibility gap over it and can't see it, and it was successful. And they're utilizing essentially two exploit vectors, two attack vectors to tunnel through, seemingly undetected. So straight from the 2322 through the firewall to the machine that was infected by the IP, by the phishing attempt, and then tunneling through to the web server. Or could possibly happen they open the email on the web server itself and then it's going straight to it, which is possible. Unlikely, but possible. So we're going to take some of this info that we know, we're going to go over to Threat Miner and see what we can come up with. So close that there. Okay. So we took I went one step too far. Oh. So we took the host IP address, the 23.22.63.14, threw it into Threat Miner here to see what we can see about it, right? So Amazon already knew that. No notes, DNS, malware, Robodex, malware samples. So nothing, and then quite a bit. And you'll notice the 2016-901 is a little bit. It's the same year. Our attack happened in August. Again, it's just a gameism. But they could have not been successful in their first attempt, like the tipper said, and then sent this out, and the private IP address could be nothing. This could just be another failed attempt that they had, like we had said in the actions on objectives. Saw a lot of net user, net share, was trying to find double slashes, looking for open IPC shares or $, or whatever other network shares. So they could have been trying to laterally move, and then they just failed. They were just locked out. It does seem like quite a bit of work by an APT to just throw a picture on a web server, right? So maybe the first attempt was not successful, and they're doing this as a secondary attempt. Who knows? So if you click on the MD5 hash that we have here, you'll see this Miranda Tate screensaver.exe. So this could have easily been an attachment to an email, to a phishing email, to try to get them to click on it to do other attacks. And then some of you, I know Miranda Tate is Ra's al Ghul's daughter, so tying into the Batman infrastructure, or the Batman theme of this whole event. So it takes us to summation to the cyber kill chain. So this is taken, I didn't make this. This is straight off of the conference. So we'll see a lot of or pretty much all of this we've identified. We got the IP of the web server, what it's scanning with, that it's going off Joomla, all this attack infrastructure we identified. We found the email address on not ThreatMiner, but the other one I'll look at it here in a second. The Miranda Tate screensaver it has as delivery. Again, we're not sure if this was an initial attempt to do like tunneling or a post attempt after the first failed time. We saw that the dates were off by a couple weeks, 2 weeks or so. Could be something, could vet further analysis. Exploitation, we know that the brute force originated at the 23.22, 40.80, use that Batman password to log in. The installation, 3791, got the hash, threw it into virus total, saw that it hit 60 out of 69. C2, we identified as the glassine-bracket.jumpandgrab.com, and then the web server defacement file we identified as that JPEG. So pretty much hit on all of it. You'll see that it has the time between events, unique passwords, things like that. Those are kind of the capture the flagisms of it. Of this is CTF, they have questions they need people to answer, and so not necessarily needed for our investigation, but it's still there. And then going to essentially show the same thing on the attack navigator. Again, it doesn't really fit on the screen. So here's what I put for our bots v1 analysis through the attack navigator. Right there. So we saw active scanning, vulnerability scanning with the Acunettes, acquired the infrastructure. We saw that they built out domains and servers capabilities. They developed malware or found malware if they didn't develop it. They made that email account, Lillian Rose, excuse me. And you'll see on some of these, when I hover over them, it highlights other things. So they're tied together. The valid accounts and the brute force are all like they got the valid account to log in from the brute force. See, for execution, we saw the command and script interpreter. So for the brute force attempt, we saw that it was using that Python library to do that. So it was probably scripted. Defense evasion, all down here, valid accounts, again, from the brute force. Account discovery, it did those net user commands, file and directory discovery, network share discovery, process discovery. It had that task list, it used the net share, net session, the dir ls to find the double backslashes. The blue I'll talk about after. For C2, I have the web service on there because it was put on the web service, but it was going over non-standard ports. They were both, the source and the destination were both high ephemeral ports. I think they were 63,000 something, which is almost at the end of the spectrum. That in there, I could see the web service not being a hit on it. Some of these are kind of subjective. And then we could see the impact, the website defacement, the external and internal defacement is speaking directly to kind of what we were talking about a couple minutes ago. Is it, it's a private IP address that is being hit on. We haven't seen any indication of what the public facing is. So is it an internal website? We saw on the initial scenario that it said pull up exactly what it is. It says the user community when they visit the website. So it could just be an internal facing website. I'm unsure. And then the blue is things that weren't hits necessarily, but things that are possible. So the phishing for information with the Spear phishing attachment, which we had identified through the delivery, Miranda Tate, same thing. And then remote service, for lateral movement, I believe that the net user and net share and the find and those connections were all in an attempt to laterally move. I didn't have anything like failed attempt or anything. You could look specifically for the SMB or Windows admin shares on the event ID 4624 net log on type 3 or 10. So 3 is a network share, 10 is remote desktop, so RDP that they have right there. And failed connections on that would be more indicative of it. We didn't go down that, but that's possible. And again, if you're unsure about some of these, you can right click on them and then view the tactic, and it'll give you more information about it. So very useful. Yeah, so that's all that I have for the hunting through the SIEM. If you guys got any questions or some stuff you want to go over, let me know. Trey? Thanks, man.
Let's see what I got. I got several for you floating in the channel.
Easy ones only.
We'll start off easy. What's your drink of choice?
Oh, so actually,
what are you on these days?
St. Louis IPA in here before we started. I was a little nervous.
There you go. Lob that one in there.
This is just water. Got wire shark. Do.
So most of these all came out of the Slacks. If you were limited, what's your preferred? I love that sticker. I still got that one. What's your preferred data source if you had to pick one? You want network or host?
Host. Always host.
Always
nice for maybes. You know, it's hard to prove really what's going on through just network data. When you can pull out sysmon and Windows event logs and application logs and security logs, there's no maybe that it's there or it's not there. So if they could have sysmon on every machine with an up-to-date configuration, it would make everything a lot easier. I guess for the blue side, it would be probably more difficult for the red team if that was the case.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, man. We did some good magic though with just NetFlow data at times.
True that. It's got some good stuff in there. I mean, some good stuff there. The thing that I like about the bots and doing it in this way, this course, Trey and I had developed something very similar a couple years ago. So seeing it from the blue side and then seeing it from Trey's red side to be a kind of a purple team event we did over 3 days, I think was really useful. And having that red mindset is definitely brings another kind of way to look at it.
Right. So I know we talked a lot, well, exclusively tonight in Splunk, which was the SIEM of choice, obviously, because they run bots and it's their data set. Yeah. But if you had to pick one, which one do you prefer?
Always Splunk. The Kibana or the Elk Stack or Rock NSM, however you want to look at it, has a lot of really good innate features to it. It's free. I think they have some kind of pay platform now, but it's still free. It comes baked into Security Onion, so as soon as you start feeding the PCAPs, it'll automatically load up. In Kibana, it does a great job of integrating things. I don't like the language. I'm much more comfortable with SPL or the Splunk query language. It's what we've pretty much always used. I think it's a lot easier. I really like it, but it is expensive. If you're using it in Enclave, it definitely would be a harder sell, I think. But however you want to do it, whether or not you like let me back up. Whether or not you like Splunk or Kibana or Azure or whatever, if you use ArcSight, it probably wasn't the talk for you. But it's all JSON. So you can ingest JSON into any of those SIEMs. So if you feel more comfortable with the other ones, it'll take a little bit more tweaking to get the values to, or the fields to parse correctly, but you could upload this into anything. If you feel crazy, you could load it into Excel, I guess.
Yeah, that's a hard no for me there.
Yeah, be a hefty no thank you.
So getting some little deeper questions here. Got one. If my organization's firewall doesn't support or have the ability to do deep packet inspection or SSL stripping, will that limit what you're going to see and detect in the network?
Yeah, so that's definitely that's a good point. That's a good question. You don't see the SSL data in here. You can see everything was open source, but in V2 and the further ons, they have SSL data in there. So that's what I'm talking about with network data is a maybe, right? So in real life, you have SSL and everything. You're probably not going to break and inspect a lot of stuff because it's time consuming. You have SLAs you have to stick to, privacy concerns, yada yada.
And spend a ridiculous amount of money on tools.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get them on. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of resources. But if you can get what it called the top 5. You can get source IP, destination IP, or the host names. You can get how many bytes are going through. You can get the times that they're happening, the ports. All those can still paint a picture, right? They're not going to just because you can only see like the metadata or kind of like the traffic data, just the headers, doesn't mean you can't make something out of it. You can make your assumptions or your hypotheses inside of the network data, regardless of if it's open text or open, if it's encrypted or not, and then you can utilize your host data to confirm it.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah, no, you're good. Next one. So, in your opinion, how often are SIEMs or something like this, say the Splunk logs, used for post-compromise versus active detection?
Can you repeat the last part of it? I didn't hear you.
How often have you seen these logs used, or you yourself used the log data for post-compromise, say like for doing incident response or triage, as opposed to like an active detection? Okay. So like seeing it right now in real time.
Yeah. Okay. So like the bots, the one that we did now, any of the box exercises are obviously all after the fact. They're not real. But the SIEM data, I think I say this. So I've seen both. I've seen in real time, in real life, and then like when you go on a mission, typically there's something that sparked that, right? So in this instance, we deployed to the Wayne Enterprises because there was a website defacement. But what if you deployed there because they had a bunch of strange, crazy DNS requests, right? It's all reaching out to an IP address or a domain name, because it wouldn't reach out to an IP address. That would be crazy. It's all reaching out to a domain name. A lot of .ru's, a lot of strange ending CHs. That's not necessarily a malicious action or a malicious actions on target. It could be anything. You could have downloaded an ad or something. They could have open Wi-Fi on there, and people have games on their phones. They have TikTok on their phones, and it's reaching out to China or whatever, allegedly. So in that instance, you would go and you would have a fair amount of data already there, and then you would still be actively hunting through as you find it. So you could do an engagement, for a couple weeks if it's post. If you're doing instant response, or you could be on something persistently hunting on it for a year. You could turn into a SOC and just be constantly hunting. SOCs hunt every day. Security operations centers hunt every day across huge enclaves. So they're useful regardless of where you're at, I think.
Still there, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I couldn't tell if I lost your data. It was like an abrupt
Oh.
cutout.
Sorry.
Hey, can y'all keep it down? They can hear you on the stream still. There. So the other point I brought up with that too is a lot of it really depends on the implementation and how they put it together. So if they implement their SIEM, they're feeding all their logs to it, all that. That's great and all, right? But like we've seen it in real life and experience that someone throws an elk stack instance together, but gives it 2 gigs of RAM and a small hard drive, and nothing happens. It just continually dies because it can't process and keep up with the data.
Sure.
So a lot of it really, I would say, depends on how much horsepower you give that instance and what you're doing with your logs and what kind of logs you're getting.
Yeah. And I had said something kind of like that in the beginning about having the visibility gaps. You almost have to, because you can't have everything. You know, they have instances or configurations. You can look at the configuration guides for clustering these together, you know, to have multiple search heads or multiple indexers to be able to process a huge amount of information at a time. But eventually it's all going to come down to how much are you or your company willing to spend in it. You know, whether it's
Down to the dollar.
that's it, man. It's all about the dirt.
Okay. So let's see, what was the next one? Okay, so I'm interested to see what your take is on this one because we've been in places like this. How many different SIEMs are too many to you? The question says, I've seen some vendors at conferences say that they're selling a product to Fortune 100 companies and they already have 6 different SIEMs, but they just bought another because they felt like it. And they're keeping them like Russian little nesting dolls, just one after another after another.
Yeah, I'm no expert, right? But I'm thinking if you got more than 2 different SIEMs, different products, then your company has way too much turnover, and no one is doing a good job on the cyber network or cyber infrastructure divide. And the only reason I would even say 2 is if you're testing out different ways to do it. So I've seen, and we've implemented 2 of them at a time when we were kind of deciding if we wanted to go for one or the other, to kind of compare. But you would do that in a dev network. You know, you wouldn't deploy 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different SIEMs to production environment. I mean, unless you got a ton of money, and every analyst you have wants a different one, but that just seems crazy to me. If you got that much money, just buy Splunk.
Buy all its add-ons and licenses.
Yeah.
None of us work for Splunk, by the way. We do not endorse that. We just like their product when you have it done right. So next one was with COVID moving the whole workforce remote, right? How do you think this has made things for defenders? Has this made the implementations for SIEMs as well as the ingestion of that data harder? Has it made it easier? How do you feel that visibilities went?
Would you mean like doing like hunting type stuff off of this data, or what do you mean? Or just like accessing the SIEM from remote?
Well, no, like the SIEM access is easy. That part's good once the instance is up. The question was more geared towards having the visibility, being able to pivot and even realistically utilize that data. Because we've seen a lot of people, they just got pushed to home one day, right? Some of those hosts, they may or may not have had host logging enabled. They may or may not have had, like, say, Sysmon, for example, something like that going. And then now with everyone, all of a sudden, you're no longer in that organization's premise anymore, right? So how's that NetFlow data working? Like all of these different kind of things.
Okay. I'd say I got 2 parts for that. So where I work, we did that. I came home from vacation and COVID hit, and the next week they're like, everybody go home. See you whenever. So on the one side, we had utilized, we'd found some malicious PCAPs and stuff that you can find available online and fed them into SIEMs to continue to do training and like work as a team through all of it. But then as far as real world operations would go, I think that this was probably a big plus for having the SIEM, because you're at home. You don't have your 4 monitors, 5 monitors, whatever, or maybe you do if you're Trey. You got 9 different computers. You don't buy monitors.
All of the screens.
But so if you have, if you're back down, I had one screen for a while. So if I had to have open 10 different tools to be able to try to correlate the data or the traffic or the malware that I'm trying to find over all these different tools, there's no way I could have done that. You can use the SIEM and join all those together if their names are different, which we didn't cover in here, so never mind. But you can correlate all those different source types right from one centralized screen. You can have the dashboards like what I had pre-built in there to pre-populate all of this stuff, or use Phantom like I had mentioned specifically for Splunk, or is it Kibana has something beat that'll do it as well. I don't remember what it's called, to be able to automate it, but being able to do real world operations remotely and even from home, sometimes you really only need the SIEM if they're feeding everything in it correctly. You don't need anything else. You don't need someone to go out there and take a forensic image or check for files or run netstat on the distant end, because you're already collecting all of that stuff inherently.
Yeah, in a perfect world.
Yeah.
I'd be interesting to see how some people are doing it, like how they're implementing and catching even, say, that netflow data, because we've seen that some orgs are only requiring their members to just be on Teams and accessible, and they can do all the rest of their work from wherever because it's a web interface. Yeah. And then other orgs, like some of the ones we've been in and worked in, require you to VPN every day. So now there's that ability to capture that traffic.
Yeah.
It may not necessarily be good, but you have the capability. So I'd be curious to see how that looks.
I too would be, I'd be very interested in how other organizations are doing it, especially with the, what we're dealing with now. So it's just, you saw when COVID first happened, there were tons of breaches. They were going crazy because they knew people weren't out. They probably weren't prepared for it. So to see kind of like a before and after snapshot of that for some of these organizations, and how they responded to it and what it looks like now would be very interesting.
Yeah. So another one from RJ. Can you explain how a cloud-hosted SIEM's ingesting that data from a network? Because his on-premises coworkers just don't trust it. They think it's magic that you're taking NetFlow and data from inside the network and sending it to someone else's network.
You talking about like seeing the SIEM data from the house?
No, like in a cloud-hosted SIEM. So pulling it
like
off.
Like Azure or something.
Yeah.
Or if you're hosting, okay. Yeah, we got coworkers like that too. It's really no different than hosting this on bare metal in a data center that you have on site. You still have to authenticate. There's still permissions you have to go through. There's still ACLs in there.
You got to set up the log facilities.
Yep. There's logs, and then as far as the government is concerned, there are gov clouds and stuff in there where they entrust whomever to host whatever kind of information that it is, and pretty much everything is hosted on the cloud, someone else's server. But everything else, pretty much everything's hosted. Every website you go to is on there. It's all on AWS or Google Cloud. That's why you see when one of the buckets in Virginia goes down that you lose access to a bunch of stuff. I know a couple weeks ago people couldn't use their Roombas because the S3 bucket dropped, which is also a valid concern.
Robots going crazy.
For the coworker, for not trusting it, because having something that you can't hold and see or go into and remote into locally is also a concern for a lot of people. So I think it's just trying to find the middle between how much you're willing to spend, how much space you have, and kind of what you're sending up there.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about and touch on, but it's in my opinion, it's a lot of the same steps you're going to run through anyway if you're hosting it on premise or in the cloud, especially nowadays.
Sure.
So like, let's say something does happen and it goes down. If you're all not working in the office anyway, it's still the same problem.
Yeah, that's fair. Or if you have a company where everyone's teleworking, you're all over the world or all over the country, you're not going to have someone drive out to wherever the physical device is located. Everybody's VPNing into to turn it back on.
Yep. So next question we got in here is, can you talk to or recommend any cyber range simulators that you could utilize to safety run real world threat scenarios? I brought this one to you. I thought it was really interesting when they came up in there because this is something we've played with a bit ourselves and did for when we hosted a couple of these training scenarios.
So the main scenarios that we have, like I said, that we train on are either utilizing the red cell that you have and the blue cell coming together as a purple team. Trey and I had done something called the kill chain network. So basically he would do an attack. I would see the attack and then we would teach what happened, how to detect it on both sides, which is kind of the same thing that we had done with this. Another one is using all the bots data sets that are on there. It's, you can download a Splunk server for free. I think you can ingest up to like 500 megabits a day or something like that, which all this is already ingested. You just throw it in there. There's a malicious PCAP website that we use now to go through network challenges. So you basically take the PCAP, you ingest it in your security onion, and then throw the ingested fields into Splunk and then hunt on it that way. And there's also something called the Mordor project, MORDOR, excuse me, which might be able to, let me see if I can find this, which has adversarial techniques that it'll replay through ABT 29, ABT 3.
Yeah, a couple of the ones I was touching on, we played with Atomic Red Team there for a bit, trying to get it to automate and actually kick them off so it looked like it happens.
Canary owns?
Yeah, I think it's by Red Canary.
Yeah.
And then the other one I thought
that one's good. And then
the other piece I thought was cool for automation was Ghosts. I want to say it's Carnegie Mellon that came up with that one.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that utilized a lot to automate and act like users in the network, and it'll take malicious actions or normal actions. It surfs the web, does all that fun stuff.
That one's pretty cool too, because you can tie in physical infrastructure with virtual infrastructure. So that one's really useful for generating like live data. And there's also the Splunk attack range, which they just put out a way to do it on Docker, which is, it's right here, it's awesome. Which will do kind of what the Red Canary attacks will do, where it'll generate different attacks. So you could give it, like generate this tactic or technique, like what we saw on the MITRE attack platform or framework. And then it'll replicate that for the same kind of red team, blue team, purple team type stuff that we've been talking about.
Yep. And then, worst comes to worst, you can't really beat just going at it with your own two hands and a little bit of TCP replay or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we've done that a time or two.
Yeah, say that. Nothing wrong with that, man. And you can find all kind of malicious stuff out there that's for this exact purpose. So.
Yeah, I think that's all I got on my list right now. What say you guys out there? You guys got any more questions? Anything? Go on once. Twice. Nobody's typing. Okay. So yeah, you touched on a lot tonight, and it's really even just a drop in the bucket. Like I said earlier, thanks for doing this talk. And it would be really cool if we can get you back sometime to start doing a little deeper dive on how they actually work and searching through it. So talking like source types and the data sets, how you're building the dashboards. Like, I don't think most people know this. Can't remember if you said it or not, but a lot of the dashboards you were showing tonight as you were going through the demo, like you custom built those for this and for this training event. So like going into those kind of things and how you're utilizing that data and making your pivot points would be really cool as well.
Yeah, I had a super great time. This was super fun. And yeah, I'd love to come and talk about it. This is something that I really like doing. So the more people that can learn about it, it's great. Hopefully everybody took something out of it and got something. Hopefully everybody thought it was all right.
Yeah, no, you did awesome, man. Hopefully we can actually get you down here into Tampa Bay one day and you come see the space and hang
Yeah,
out.
man. I'm vaccinated. Let's do it.
Yep. You had to. I get my last one on the 5th, so
Hell
I'll be
yeah.
all clear. But all right, I think that's it from us, guys. Thanks again for doing the talk for us, Tyler. And that
Yeah.
is going to be the temple out. Chris, you can roll credits.
All right. All right.